Chapter 5. A Sign. Last evening we went for a walk, the three of us, he, Elle, and myself. I hoped to see the Ganges, but it was getting dark already, and I feared that we would not see much. He was walking very fast, and we could hardly keep pace with him. In the meantime, he was telling Elle how he intends to teach her what to do when a pregnant woman comes and wants a male child. Is it a mantra? I ventured to ask. No, not at all, just a hint only, and the child will be a male without any doubt. Elle has been with him for the last 13 years, on and off, when she comes to India. I was intrigued that such things could be done, and hoped to learn more about it, but they were discussing now how most people come to the saint to ask mostly only for worldly things. We arrived at the Ghat, elevated bank of the river where the ritual bathing takes place and also cremation, and saw in the darkness that there was hardly a river at all at that point. At this time of year, the Ganga apparently flows at a distance of about 2 miles from here. Like nearly all Indian rivers, she changes her course from time to time. In the light of the rapidly fading dusk, one could just detect puddles of stagnant water amongst banks of sand stretching far into the distance. We turned back. He was talking to Elle. I was listening distractedly. Suddenly I was struck by one of his sentences. We who are pledged to the service of humanity. I pricked up my ears. This was the sign I was waiting for. I was sure. I knew the meaning of that, I thought, with gladness and relief. It means that he belongs to the hierarchy, the great brotherhood, who helps the evolution of mankind. Tried to reflect upon it, but they began to talk about the states of dhyana, and Elle kept teasing me, making comments about my fear of it. We went for a moment into the Deva Singh Park opposite his house, where a stage was erected for the Lam Leelas play, a festival in honor of Ram. He had a short talk with one of the young men, then we all sat in the garden in front of the house. A few people came, mostly men from the neighborhood. I asked Elle what time it was. It was getting late. It was 8, and Elle got up. I am leaving you, she said with a smile. Can you leave me? His voice had a hidden laughter in it. It is time to go for our supper, Elle answered. No, he shook his head. I mean, can you? Could you leave me? No, never, she said with emphasis. He turned to me. And you, could you leave me? Oh, yes, I can. I realized my reaction came too quickly, suspiciously so. Try. He said it very quietly, looking me straight in the eyes, and I nearly said to him, switch off the light. As I sometimes said laughingly, because when he has this strange, unearthly light in his eyes, I cannot look at him. It seems too much. It is like a physical pain. We left. I felt disturbed and asked Elle, what would she make of this last remark of his? I am not quite sure, but did you not say yesterday that your greatest trouble seems to be that you know that you won't be able to go away? I think his remark alluded to that. She could be right. I, too, am inclined to think that it was exactly what he meant. I did not tell him anything about our conversation, she continued. I never tell anything. I said that I believed her. So, it means that he knew. He knows that I cannot go away anymore. This morning, I did not go to his place because I wanted to make entries into my diary and was also waiting for Pushpa's gardener who did not come. The pots for the seedlings must be prepared. Elle went there alone. When she came back, she was telling me that he said to her that I did not want dhyana, so I am not going to have it. I was annoyed, she said. What's the use of going there, just for conversation? Listened to her and wondered, did I want dhyana? Somehow I recoiled from the idea of becoming unconscious. This is perfectly true. Was it because I did not trust him completely? Was this the reason for being uneasy about it? Did he speak to Elle like this because he intends to put me on the other road, the path of Tyaga, complete renunciation? Not once, but several times, I told him that I wanted to become like him, to have samadhi in full consciousness, which is, of course, the highest yogic state. Make the highest ideal your goal, and then try to reach it, I remember, I said. He answered gravely, in order to become completely conscious on all the levels of being, we have to go through a period of unconsciousness. How will we transcend the physical plane otherwise? Complete abstraction of the senses, complete elimination of the thinking process, represents a temporary loss of consciousness. So I think that I will come to know Dhyana, but my path will be a different one. But I said nothing to Elle about it. 1st of November. When Elle and I reached his place this morning, he was already in the garden. Elle began to walk with him up and down. They were immersed in a deep discussion, I think on the subject of Kundalini, the book she intends to publish. I was sitting inside the room on the tatchet in the usual corner, near the door leading into the garden. He came in, after a while. Elle was in the inner courtyard. I heard her laughing with the children. Asked him about the meaning of the last word he said when we were leaving last evening. Told him that a few days ago in the morning, still between wake and sleep, I realized with a certain shock that I will not be able to go away. Could he have meant the same thing? He laughed gaily and said that it was precisely what he had meant. It is your higher self who is preventing you from leaving, who told you to stay. He took some writing paper from the recess and began to write letters. I sat still for a while. Elle came in. A conversation began, in the course of which Elle was saying that the disciples of Socrates bitterly complained when they were at a disadvantage, that it is not fair to them, that in his presence their mind does not work and they cannot discuss properly as it is expected from them. Just like me, I thought. Well, that settles it. I stay. Felt a kind of relief. A decision had been taken. Some force has been used on you. Something had to be forced, and it will go on, not only now, but for years, for always, while this physical body lasts. I asked how was it that I did not notice it, and when was it? It was the day when we were left alone for a while, quite at the beginning. His eyes seemed to pierce through me. And why should you feel or notice it? Elle asked. What does the mind know beyond its range of cognition? This force, which has been used on you, he continued, will make you doubt, will cause disturbances of many kinds, but it was necessary. I sat there wondering, and the heart kept hammering wildly in its cage of ribs. Perhaps the road will be free now. The road to freedom will open. In the evening, Elle was asking questions of how the Guru gives to the disciple according to the Sufi system. And it is the same in all the yoga schools? Apparently, yes. It is done through prana, life force, etheric energy, and mainly through the heart chakra. In all great schools, it is the same. Early in the afternoon, after lunch, seated in the veranda, I was reading La Vie de Mame Gaillon, a French mystic, a book which I had borrowed from Elle. Shortly before we had to go to Bai Sahib, Jagan Nathiji came. He sat down and began to speak about Bai Sahib and my doubts, which I had mentioned to him a week ago. I asked again what is on the other side of dhyana, and he confirmed that it is not sleep. Only at the beginning it may be so, or it may seem so, but not later. He spoke with great admiration of Bai Sahib. Clearly he tried to do his best to help me. I suspected that he dropped in this afternoon for this very purpose. I was moved. He was such a kind person. In the fading evening light in his room, Elle sat in deep dhyana. I was watching for more than 1 hour. She did not stir. He was lying on the tatchet, and his disciple, Pandiji, a village Brahmin, was massaging his feet. A few days ago, he told me that Pandiji has been with him for the last 2 years, serving him, and only now he got the initiation according to the Sufi tradition. He is in a good state, he added. One could easily see that. He had the eyes of bliss. Now, slowly, methodically, he was massaging Guru's feet for over 1 hour. But now the room was in near darkness. The light of the street lamp, partly shaded by the trees in the garden, dimly illuminated the room through the open door. Sat there full of deep peace. It is such an oriental scene, the shisha massaging the Guru's feet, El in deep dhyana, kitchen noises and voices coming from the inner courtyard. Someone with a lovely tenor voice passed in the street. Life was good. 2nd November. Was alone with him this morning. Elle had to stay home to correct the proofs of her latest book, which arrived from France. Sitting on the tachet he was, I opposite him on a chair with half-closed eyes, fingering his mala. He fired question after question at me concerning my life and myself. Ideas kept rushing clearly and sharply into my mind. Could not help being flattered that he seemed to show interest in me. Then Elle came. Discussion turned to her book and the states of Kundalini. It is of no importance if you believe in the existence of Kundalini or not. Kundalini is. Kundalini is not sex impulse alone, but sex power forms part of Kundalini. As a rule, this energy at the base of the spine is more or less dominant. By our system, it is awakened gently. It will not give you much trouble. Not much, he added thoughtfully, looking at me. With Elle, it was different. Her Kundalini was awakened by Hatha Yoga practices. That's why she has much trouble. I do what I can to help her, but, he shrugged, it is in the hands of God. When awakened by Hatha Yoga, it becomes a great problem. It is a difficult way. One has to know how to take it up and take it down again through all the chakras, and it is troublesome. But with us, we begin to notice it only when it reaches the heart chakra. It means peace, bliss, states of expanded consciousness. We awaken the king, the heart chakra, and leave it to the king to activate all the other chakras. In the evening, Elle came for a little while and left soon. I remained seated in my corner of the tachet. He was in the big chair. Slowly, one by one, the beads of his mala slid through his fingers. Even outside, all was still. The garden seemed to sleep, hardly any sound of the traffic. The street was silent. He stood up and went out of the room for a short while, returned, and this time came to sit on the tachet and went into a deep state of samadhi. I noticed that he was in a different posture than usual, not cross-legged, but seated on his heels, and was facing me, who was in the corner near the door. As a rule from this place, I can see only his profile when he speaks to people seated on the chairs opposite his tachet. He stared at me with unseeing eyes, a strange smile playing on his lips. My heart made one big leap to the throat in sudden fear. I never saw him like that before. His face seemed to be composed of sheer energy, difficult to describe. Devic, perhaps? Certainly a human face can never have this expression. The feeling of dynamism, of tremendous power, increased more and more. I just sat there. The mind was not working much. Thoughts came and went in a kind of slow motion, all sorts of insignificant thoughts. The idea occurred to me that perhaps he may be doing something to my higher vehicles, but as I did not feel anything so, I thought perhaps I am mistaken. Time was passing, maybe 1 hour or even more. My head was swimming, began to think that I could go home and write some letters. He seemed in a very deep state. We'll slip out without disturbing him. A calendar hung on the opposite wall. Could not remember which day was today. On the 2nd of October I came here, 7 years after I had learned about Theosophy for the first time. Exactly 7 years, strange. An ant was crossing the floor. It was black, very large, about 1 inch long. Many insects grow to an outsize here in India. Was watching it for a while till it disappeared under a chair. What thoughts are in your mind? His voice startled me. Nothing in particular, just a few silly thoughts. Go home and lie down, he ordered. Speak to nobody. Try to rest. Give your mind a rest. Did not feel that my mind needed a rest, but got up ready to go. For how long shall I rest? Oh, half an hour or so, or even more if you can. His voice was full of indifference, quite casual. I understood that something very special had happened, but what? There was no way of finding out. Mind was peaceful, very few thoughts of a fuzzy, indistinct kind. Body was peaceful too. In our room, Elle was working on her proofs. All the lights were on. She looked up in surprise, for she did not expect me home so soon. I told her that he had sent me home with the order to lie down. "Uh-oh," she said, and continued to work. I expected some kind of comment, but she ignored me. After supper, went to our room immediately and was trying to sleep. Soon realized that I was keyed up. It was like a humming, a constant vibration in the whole of the body, like a nervous tension without actually being nervous. Told Elle that I won't sleep tonight, and I didn't. The whole night I turned restlessly about. But there was no tiredness, strangely enough. Felt elated, excited, but otherwise fine, not sleepy at all, full of energy in the morning. 3rd November. When dressing and having my bath, I was turning over in my mind what to say, for I decided to have an earnest talk with him. Gave cow dung to all the chrysanthemums, watered them, did all sorts of jobs, and felt on top of the world.